Welcome back to the channel, Legendary Legacy, Audiobook Free Daily, a channel that shares the audio recap and full audiobook of the legendary best-selling books of all time without spending a penny. Today, we will continue with the book, Thick Face, Black Heart by author Chin-Ning Chu. This is a book that teaches you how to apply the ancient wisdom of Asian philosophy and strategy to achieve success in business and life. We will proceed with Episode 10, The Advantage of Playing the Fool. You can listen to the recap audiobook episodes of the channel are published on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and other podcast platforms. You can search for our channel by typing Legendary Legacy, Audiobook Recap into the search bar. Please support our channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing so that we have more motivation to produce more audiobook episodes with the best and latest quality. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Victory Through Submission. The ancient Chinese classic, The 36 Strategies, is a manual on how to achieve victory without direct confrontation. This book has been studied by all the Asian businessmen and politicians. Because I have included the 36 strategies in my previous publications, we will not go into details at this point. One can easily perceive the essence of these strategies just by examining the titles: Pretend to be a pig in order to eat the tiger, Be wise but play the fool, and Escape is the best policy. It is a fact of life that no matter how strong or ruthless you are, there will always be someone stronger and more ruthless than you. It is important to cultivate the sensitivity to recognize when you should fight back and when you should submit. It is even more important to develop the strength to endure this period of submission. When it comes to achieving your objectives, submission sometimes can be even more effective than fighting back. Japan's economic success today clearly demonstrates the power of submission. After their defeat in World War II, Japan's status fell from being the master of half of the world to that of an occupied nation. Japan learned the hard lesson that aggression does not always accomplish one's objective. After 45 years of silent submission, today Japan is thriving once more. When you win, you lose. When you win, you lose. This great wisdom is from the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi. This is profound insight and it is not easy to perceive at first, but the following story will illustrate the point. Years ago, I met a man in his early 60s who seemed to be without hope, as if he were trapped in a dark pit. He had been unemployed for over 3 years and had lost his life's savings. It had all started 5 years earlier when he entered the high finance world of a lucrative, overseas real estate venture. It turned out to be a total fraud. He lost over $270,000. He was so upset about his loss that he started to pursue justice. His obsession forced him to take large amounts of time off from work, which finally resulted in his dismissal. After 3 years of legal battles and unemployment, he had devoured his remaining savings. By the time he won his court case, the offender had liquidated all of his assets and he was left empty-handed. Countless small and large battles are fought in life. We all have to learn to choose wisely in which battle to fight, and in which one to accept defeat graciously and subsequently endure the humiliation of that defeat. Sometimes the price of ultimate winning can be so costly, you end up being the real loser. As Lee Iacocca said, if competitiveness is reduced to simply who can produce it the cheapest, then the biggest winner will be the guy who's willing to be the biggest loser. Do not cross those who can hurt you. Mr. Wong is a talented artist in Taiwan. He used to make a limited number of pottery objects and then would sell them by word of mouth to his friends. He was making a meager living. By chance, Mr. Liu, an artist promoter, saw Mr. Wong's work, recognized Wong's potential and agreed to promote him. Liu gathered 1,000 sponsors. Each sponsor paid a membership fee equivalent to US $1,000. With a total of $1 million, Liu began his promotional campaign, including private gallery showings, press exposure, and much more. 3 years later, Wong's work became one of the most collectible of any contemporary artist in Hong Kong. His work now commands as much as $100,000. Mr. Wong began to think, why should I pay Lu over half of my income? Furthermore, Lu is a dominating individual. Maybe it is better to get rid of Lu and go on my own. Wong discussed this with a distant relative, Mrs. Lam, a successful businesswoman. Mrs. Lam's sincere advice was, there are certain people you should never cross. Lu is one of them. Whatever your discontentment is with Mr. Lu, you should endure. Lu is a very powerful individual in the art community of Taiwan. As fast as he made you, he can break you even faster. You, as a rising artist, should never be on the wrong side of Mr. Lu. Through catering to Lu, you have obtained recognition beyond your wildest dreams. The world of art is purely about preserving values. You need Lu on your team. Mrs. Lam's advice was most prudent. A struggling Hong Kong artist arrived in San Francisco and began to search for a gallery to represent his work, oil paintings portraying the lives of fishermen in his homeland. He labored without success before finding someone who recognized his talent. A prestigious gallery owner loved his work and vigorously promoted the artist through numerous showings. The owner published colorful coffee table books displaying the pieces, and he invested tremendous capital in positioning the artist as the gallery's main showpiece. Through the gallery's efforts, his first painting sold for $20,000 and the second for $80,000. The artist, the gallery, and the collectors all profited. However, a few years down the road the artist was convinced by his friends that it was in his best interest to go out on his own. The end result was, the gallery went out of business, the artist has a small shop selling nothing but his paintings, and his paintings have no tradable value for the collectors. The artist did not gross anywhere near the amount he did when the gallery handled his work. Worse yet, all the people who invested in his paintings have lost money, and I am one of them. The advantages of playing the fool. Not long ago a Taiwanese client of mine suggested I contact Mr. Taro, a Japanese businessman, in Tokyo. Mr. Taro was looking for assistance with his wholesale produce operation. I flew to Tokyo and met with Mr. Taro. According to Mr. Taro, too much of what was shipped to him turned out to be inferior or spoiled because it was improperly handled at the source of production. This caused great concern since he paid 10% duty on goods arriving in Japan whether or not he sold them. Furthermore, he had to hire additional help to sort through the shipment and he was losing money. What he wanted, he said, was somebody at the point of shipment to ensure quality. He was willing to pay 15% above his present cost for superior goods. To prepare me for my new role, I toured his warehouses and listened to him while he explained his needs. The man was polite and thorough. Before my departure, Mr. Taro stressed the importance of providing him with current U.S. agriculture information. As the faxes began to fly across the ocean, there was a curious lack of actual commitment on the part of my new client. He declined to place orders while at the same time requesting more information on U.S. agriculture market. Now, I don't mind giving information. The transfer of information is part of any business arrangement. However, that implies that there is a business arrangement in the first place and the transfer of information is an element in the deal. Thus far I had received nothing much of value from the Japanese businessman, yet I was faxing information by the fax load. If I was to be an information service, I thought I should charge accordingly. I decided to push the man. I asked him for a commitment. The Japanese dislike saying no, as it disrupts a critical harmony implied in the Japanese way of doing business. When Mr. Taro faxed me back to tell me that at present he was not yet ready to commit, at least not without even more information, I suspected that I might have been taken for a ride. It did not surprise me that Mr. Taro used me to gather information for him. It is a common practice among Asian businesses. What I found interesting was my response to being used. In the past, I might have seen two options: either I could chalk it up to experience, cut my losses and move on to other things, or I could write the man to tell him that I was aware of his intentions and found them distasteful. The first option was practical, although a dead end. The second option, although also a dead end, would make my ego feel better. I decided on a third option: adopt the spirit of endurance, play the fool and do nothing. Since I had invested my time and goodwill, it seemed that I ought to find some advantage in the situation. I would accept him at his word, that he was an honorable man whose intentions to do business with me were bona fide, but that at present he had no use for my company's services. I would endure my humiliation of being outsmarted by Mr. Taro and divorce my ego from the situation, leaving open the future possibility of his business or assistance. On the surface, the third option had the practical result of the first option. Both of them implied resignation and acceptance, but the third option in fact produced an additional result: suddenly I was in control. No longer had I been simply used unfairly and resigned to the role of victim. The moment I took the third option, I created an internal environment in which I was not only prepared to succeed, I had already succeeded. With the exception of possible material gain should Mr. Taro come back to me, nothing remained to be accomplished. In this sense, I was not even truly waiting, because waiting implies waiting for something, an outcome either good or bad. No, I was simply available should something good come along. Inversely, I was unavailable for anything bad to happen, the possibility of which I had already banished from my reality. A year later, Mr. Taro called on me in the United States, and the end result of his visit was that he placed a sizable order which also led to other business ventures. My tactic of playing the fool paid off. Summary of key points. 1. Victory through submission. If one is able and strong, then one should disguise oneself in order to appear inept and weak. 2. It is a fact of life that no matter how strong or tough you are, there will always be someone stronger and tougher than you. 3. It is important to cultivate the sensitivity to recognize when you should fight back and when you should submit. 4. It is even more important to develop the strength able to endure the period of submission. 5. When it comes to achieving your objectives, submission sometimes can be even more effective than fighting back. 6. When you win, you lose. When we fight a battle that we shouldn't, even if we win, we lose. 7. We all have to learn to choose wisely which battle to fight, and in which one to accept defeat and subsequently endure the humiliation of that defeat. Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. Albert Einstein.